You look at Schwarber, what are the reasons why he has been so productive now into his 30s?
Well, I'm sure, first of all, he's a very talented hitter. He was a high number one draft choice. He's extremely strong, as you know. He can do a lot at the plate. But I think he's made adjustments. He's continued to work with Kevin Long, our hitting coach, and he's continued to get better as an overall hitter. So I think that's a lot. And of course, he's a very hard worker. So he gets
The
out of
baseball world is
visibility
on
whatever he
fire right
possibly
now,
can.
and nobody saw this coming. We're not talking about your typical off-season shuffle where a few aging veterans change zip codes for one last paycheck. No. What's happening right now between the New York Yankees, Philadelphia Phillies, and Milwaukee Brewers is something completely different. This is a high-stakes game of dominance, desperation, and dollars that could literally reshape the entire landscape of Major League Baseball for the next decade. Welcome to the most explosive off-season triangle in recent memory, where every single move by one franchise sends shockwaves through the other two, creating a domino effect of biblical proportions that has general managers sweating through their suits and fans glued to their phones waiting for the next bombshell to drop. Right now, in this exact moment, three of baseball's most ambitious organizations are locked in a strategic chess match where billions of dollars, championship dreams, and franchise legacies hang in the balance. The Milwaukee Brewers are dangling one of the most coveted pitchers in all of baseball like a diamond necklace at an auction house, watching as desperate contenders line up with their checkbooks open. The New York Yankees, baseball's most iconic franchise, are trying to solve an impossible equation where they need everything but can't afford everything, forcing them to make soul-crushing decisions about whether to chase firepower for their lineup or lock down their bullpen. And the Philadelphia Phillies are staring down the barrel of potentially losing two beloved franchise cornerstones to free agency, knowing that every dollar they spend to keep their championship window open might be the dollar that slams it shut forever. This isn't just about baseball. This is about legacy, about redemption, about the cutthroat business side of America's pastime that most fans never get to see up close. This is about general managers making career-defining decisions in smoke-filled rooms, about agents playing teams against each other like puppets on strings, about owners deciding how many millions they're willing to hemorrhage in pursuit of a trophy that seems just barely out of reach. And here's the kicker that makes this whole situation absolutely fascinating. These three teams are so interconnected right now that a single decision by any one of them could trigger a chain reaction that completely alters the destiny of the other two. It's like watching three heavyweight boxers circling each other in the ring, knowing that the first punch thrown will determine everything that comes after. Let's dive into Milwaukee first, because the Brewers are sitting on what might be the most valuable trading card in the entire sport right now, and they know it. Freddie Peralta isn't just some middle-of-the-rotation arm that gets trotted out every fifth day to eat innings and hope for the best. This is a legitimate ace-caliber pitcher in his absolute prime. A strikeout machine who carved through opposing lineups in 2025 like a hot knife through butter, posting an earned run average that would make Cy Young himself nod in approval. We're talking about a guy who makes hitters look absolutely foolish with his devastating repertoire, a pitcher who can single-handedly change the outcome of a playoff series, the kind of arm that championship teams dream about having on the mound in October when everything is on the line and there's no tomorrow. But here's where the story gets absolutely wild. The Brewers didn't plan to trade Peralta. This whole situation exists because of something that should have been a pure, unadulterated victory for Milwaukee. Just days ago, Brandon Woodruff, their bona fide ace, who they thought might walk away into free agency, shocked the baseball world by accepting the qualifying offer and returning to Milwaukee on a one-year deal worth $22.5 million. For the Brewers, this should have been nothing but champagne and celebration. They get their ace back, they avoid the nightmare scenario of losing both Woodruff and Corbin Burnes in back-to-back years, and they maintain the kind of starting rotation depth that makes small-market teams competitive against the big-spending behemoths. But in baseball, as in life, sometimes your greatest strength creates your most valuable opportunity. With Woodruff back in the fold, the Brewers suddenly found themselves with an embarrassment of riches in the starting rotation, and more importantly, they found themselves with a chance to address their most glaring weakness. Milwaukee's farm system, once the envy of baseball and the pipeline that kept them competitive year after year despite their modest payroll, has been hemorrhaging talent. They desperately need an infusion of young, controllable position players, especially hitters who can actually put runs on the board. And sitting right there in their rotation is Freddie Peralta, a pitcher with multiple years of team control remaining at a price point that won't break the bank, making him arguably the most attractive trade chip available anywhere in baseball right now. General Manager Matt Arnold isn't stupid. He sees the writing on the wall. He knows that in today's hyper-competitive baseball economy, Peralta represents more than just a great pitcher. He represents a potential haul of prospects that could set the Brewers up for sustained success well into the next decade. This is the kind of trade that could define Arnold's entire tenure in Milwaukee, the kind of move that either gets you celebrated as a genius or run out of town on a rail if it goes wrong. The pressure is immense, the stakes are astronomical, and every single contending team in baseball is making phone calls right now trying to figure out what it would take to pry Peralta away from Milwaukee. And that brings us directly to the New York Yankees, because if ever there was a team that perfectly embodied the phrase "desperate times call for desperate measures," it's the Bronx Bombers right now. The Yankees are facing a legitimately terrifying scenario as they look toward opening day 2026. Their rotation, which should theoretically be a strength with names like Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon headlining the staff, is instead a massive question mark wrapped in an enigma and stuffed inside a nightmare. Both Cole and Rodon, the two highest-paid starters on the roster, are dealing with recovery timelines from past surgeries that might keep them sidelined or severely limited to start the season. For a franchise that demands excellence, that prints money like the Federal Reserve, and that has World Series or bust expectations every single year, going into a season without your top two starters healthy is absolutely unacceptable. This is where Freddie Peralta enters the picture like a superhero swooping in to save the day. The Yankees need exactly what Peralta offers, a proven frontline starting pitcher who can step into high-pressure situations and deliver results immediately. They need someone who can anchor the rotation while Cole and Rodon work their way back to full strength. They need a pitcher who won't crumble under the suffocating pressure of pitching in Yankee Stadium, where every single start is dissected by millions of fans and the back page of every New York tabloid. Peralta checks every single box on the Yankees' wish list, and better yet, his contract situation makes him affordable enough that the Yankees could theoretically acquire him without completely destroying their payroll flexibility for other moves. But here's where the Yankees' situation gets incredibly complicated. And it's this complexity that makes their offseason decisions so absolutely fascinating to watch unfold. The Yankees don't just need pitching. They also need to address a bullpen that lost significant pieces. They need to upgrade an offense that was maddeningly inconsistent throughout 2025. And they need to do all of this while operating under ownership that, despite the Yankees' legendary spending reputation, has shown increasing reluctance to blow past luxury tax thresholds into the stratosphere. Brian Cashman, the Yankees' general manager who has been doing this job longer than some current players have been alive, finds himself in an impossible position where he needs to prioritize among multiple critical needs with finite resources. The Yankees have the prospect capital to acquire Peralta. Milwaukee desperately wants what New York has: high-upside position player prospects, especially infielders, the kind of young talent that can develop into everyday big leaguers and provide value for years at minimal cost. The framework for a deal is sitting right there, tantalizingly close, like a perfectly ripe apple hanging from a branch just barely out of reach. All it would take is for Cashman to authorize his front office to put together a package centered around one of the Yankees' top prospects, maybe throw in another secondary piece to sweeten the pot, and suddenly Freddie Peralta is wearing pinstripes, and the Yankees' early season pitching crisis is solved. But, and this is a massive but, if the Yankees empty their prospect cupboard to acquire Peralta, what does that mean for their ability to address their offensive needs? What happens to their pursuit of a game-changing bat that could finally give their lineup the consistent middle-of-the-order production it desperately lacks? This is the knife's edge that the Yankees are walking right now, trying to balance immediate needs against long-term flexibility, trying to decide whether to mortgage the future for a pitcher who solves one problem while potentially creating others. Now let's talk about the Devin Williams situation, because if the Peralta decision is complex, the Williams scenario is downright Byzantine. Williams, for those who haven't been following along, is one of the elite closers in all of baseball when he's on his game. We're talking about a guy with 2 all-star appearances, a pitcher whose changeup is so disgusting that hitters literally look silly swinging at it, someone who was widely considered the best reliever in baseball during his peak years in Milwaukee. The Yankees, recognizing his value, paid a hefty price to trade for Williams in December 2024, surrendering valuable assets to bring him to the Bronx, specifically to be their closer, their ninth-inning assassin, the guy who would slam the door shut on victories and make opposing fans go home sad. Except that's not quite how 2025 played out for Williams in pinstripes. His single season in New York was, to put it diplomatically, a roller coaster ride of chaos and confusion. His underlying metrics, all those fancy sabermetric numbers that front offices obsess over, still suggested he had elite stuff. His strikeout rate remained impressive, hitters still chased his pitches out of the zone at absurd rates, and the raw talent was obviously still there. But his earned run average ballooned to nearly 5 runs per game during the first half of the season, a number that would make a mediocre middle reliever blush with embarrassment, let alone one of baseball's supposed premier closers. The situation got so bad that the Yankees actually removed Williams from the closer role temporarily, a humiliating demotion that sent shockwaves through the baseball world. Williams did pitch better in the second half, regaining some of his form and reminding everyone why the Yankees traded for him in the first place. But the damage to his reputation, at least in New York, had been done. The fans who initially celebrated his acquisition now viewed him with suspicion. The media that once anointed him as the savior of the Yankees' bullpen now questioned whether he could handle the pressure. And the front office, which had invested so heavily in bringing him to the Bronx, found itself facing an uncomfortable question. Do we double down on this investment and re-sign Williams to a massive multi-year contract, banking on him returning to his previous elite form? Or do we cut our losses, let him walk in free agency, and use that money elsewhere? The reports coming out of New York indicate that the Yankees are indeed in discussions with Williams's representatives about a potential reunion. On one level, this makes perfect sense. The Yankees know Williams intimately, they've seen him up close for an entire season, they understand both his strengths and his weaknesses, and they still believe that the talent is there if they can just unlock it consistently. The investment they made to acquire him would look even worse if they let him walk away for nothing after just 1 year. There's organizational pride at stake here, a reluctance to admit that maybe the trade didn't work out as planned. But the financial reality is brutal and unforgiving. Williams is going to command a massive contract on the open market, potentially $15 million per year or more over multiple years. For a team that's trying to address multiple needs with a finite budget, committing that kind of money to a closer who struggled for half of last season is an enormous risk. And here's where the Williams decision intersects directly with the Peralta situation in a way that makes the Yankees' offseason calculus even more complicated. If the Yankees spend $15+ million per year on Williams, does that restrict their ability to take on Peralta's contract in a trade? Does it limit their flexibility to pursue other upgrades? Does it mean they have to sacrifice offensive improvements to shore up the bullpen? The Yankees also have other options for the closer role. They acquired David Bednar and Camilo Doval at the trade deadline last year, both capable high-leverage relievers who could theoretically handle ninth-inning duties if given the opportunity. Maybe the smart play is to let Williams walk, save that $15 million, and trust that the existing bullpen pieces are good enough to get the job done while redirecting those financial resources toward a transformative offensive player. And that's where we get to the real heart of the Yankees' dilemma, the decision that will define their entire offseason and possibly their 2026 season. Do they prioritize pitching or hitting? Do they chase after Freddie Peralta to solve their rotation issues and re-sign Devin Williams to lock down the bullpen? Or do they go all in on acquiring an elite offensive player who can change the entire complexion of their lineup? Names like Kyle Tucker, one of the premier outfielders in baseball, keep popping up in rumors connected to the Yankees. Tucker represents the kind of middle-of-the-order bat that New York hasn't had consistently in years, a player who can hit for average, hit for power, get on base, and play excellent defense. Landing Tucker or someone of his caliber would be a franchise-altering move that could finally give the Yankees the offensive firepower to compete with the best teams in baseball. But you can't have everything, even when you're the New York Yankees. The money has to come from somewhere. The prospect capital needed for trades is finite. Decisions have to be made, priorities have to be established, and someone in the Yankees front office has to look at all the options on the table and make the call that will either be celebrated as genius or criticized as folly depending on how things play out. If Brian Cashman chooses to spend big on pitching, he's betting that the Yankees can win with their current offensive core. If he prioritizes the bat and lets Williams walk while passing on Peralta, he's betting that the Yankees' pitching depth is good enough to survive and that adding elite offensive production is the key to championship success. Now, let's head down to Philadelphia, where the hot stove drama has a completely different flavor, but is no less intense or consequential. The Phillies aren't dealing with trade rumors or trying to solve rotation puzzles. Instead, they're facing something arguably more difficult: emotional decisions about beloved franchise icons who helped build the modern era of Philadelphia baseball, but who are now aging veterans demanding contracts that could cripple the team's future flexibility. Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto, two names that Philadelphia fans scream from the cheap seats, two players who have become synonymous with Phillies baseball over the past few years, are both free agents right now. Both men have officially hit the open market available to the highest bidder, and while everyone assumes they'll return to Philadelphia, nothing is guaranteed in the cold, hard world of professional sports, where loyalty takes a back seat to dollars and cents. Dave Dombrowski, the Phillies' president of baseball operations and a man who has built championship contenders everywhere he's worked, faces perhaps the most difficult decisions of his Philadelphia tenure right now. Kyle Schwarber is the easier case to understand, even if the decision itself is agonizing. The man is an absolute fan favorite, the kind of player who makes Citizens Bank Park shake with his tape measure home runs and whose infectious personality has made him a beloved figure in Philadelphia sports. He declined the qualifying offer, which was completely expected since he's going to get a much larger payday on the open market. Schwarber isn't just a good player, he's been the engine that makes the Phillies' offense go. A left-handed power bat that opposing pitchers fear and that balances out Philadelphia's lineup in crucial ways. He set career highs in several offensive categories during 2025, proving that even in his early 30s, he's still producing at an elite level. The case for bringing Schwarber back is overwhelming from a baseball perspective. He's a proven commodity, he knows the organization, he's beloved in the clubhouse, and losing him would create a massive hole in the lineup that wouldn't be easy to fill. Philadelphia's entire offensive identity has been built around having Schwarber at the top of the order or in the designated hitter spot, driving in runs and setting the tone for everyone who bats behind him. Walking away from that production would be organizational malpractice, right? Well, not so fast. Because the case against re-signing Schwarber is rooted in the harsh realities of father time and baseball economics. Schwarber will be 33 years old at the start of next season, an age where players, especially those whose game is built primarily on power, tend to start declining. He's a pure designated hitter at this point, offering zero defensive value, which means the Phillies would be paying premium dollars for a player who can only contribute with the bat. And according to multiple reports from insiders with connections to his camp, Schwarber is seeking a contract that starts at 5 years with an average annual value well north of $25 million, potentially pushing toward $30 million per year. We're talking about a total contract value that could approach or exceed $150 million for a player who will be 37 or 38 years old when the deal expires. That's an absolutely staggering commitment for a team that's already staring down luxury tax penalties and that has other significant needs to address. Multiple big market clubs are reportedly involved in the Schwarber sweepstakes, with the Boston Red Sox and Toronto Blue Jays being mentioned frequently as potential suitors. If a bidding war erupts, the price could get pushed even higher, forcing Dombrowski to make an excruciating choice between loyalty to a beloved player and fiscal responsibility to the organization. Can the Phillies really afford to let Schwarber walk? Probably not without significant fan backlash and a gaping hole in their lineup. But can they afford to pay him what he's demanding? That's the multi-million-dollar question that's keeping Dombrowski up at night. Then there's JT Realmuto, and if the Schwarber decision is difficult, the Realmuto situation is downright heart-wrenching. Realmuto has been, for years, the undisputed best catcher in baseball, a player who does everything at an elite level. He hits for average and power, he's one of the best defensive catchers in the sport with a throwing arm that makes base runners think twice about stealing, and he's the unquestioned leader of the Phillies pitching staff. Every single pitcher on that roster trusts Realmuto implicitly, knows that he'll call the right pitches in crucial situations, and understands that having him behind the plate makes everyone better. But Realmuto will be 35 years old next season, and catcher is the most physically demanding position in all of baseball. It's the position where players age the fastest, where the accumulated wear and tear of squatting hundreds of times per game for years on end takes an inevitable toll on the body. The conventional wisdom in baseball is that you don't invest long-term money in catchers over 35 because the decline is coming, it's just a question of when. Yet Realmuto has defied that conventional wisdom so far, maintaining his production and his defensive excellence even as he's aged, showing virtually no signs of slowing down. The positive news for Phillies fans who desperately want Realmuto back is that he's reportedly open to a shorter-term deal than initially expected. Instead of seeking a 4- or 5-year contract that would take him into his late 30s, Realmuto might be willing to accept a 3-year deal with a high average annual value. For Dombrowski, if he can lock up Realmuto for 3 years at something like $25 to $30 million per season, that's potentially a no-brainer decision. You get to keep your franchise catcher, your clubhouse leader, your defensive anchor, without committing to paying him into his late 30s when the decline is almost certain to arrive. It's a win-win scenario if the numbers can be worked out.